continue our series on abiding in Jesus, and today is the third of the series, and we're calling it Abiding in His Love. Let us look at verses 9 to 15 of John chapter 15, 9 to 15. Verse 9 says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now abide in my love," or dwell in my love. So here we find Jesus, it's not a request, it's not an option, but it's a command. And he said, "As the Father has loved me, you, so have I loved you. Now you dwell in my love." This calls for obedience. So verse 10 he goes on to say, "If you obey my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in love." You know, there are people who preach but never practice. They say a lot of things, good things, but when you look at their lives, they're not practicing them. But Jesus is a very example of every little thing he is teaching his disciples to do. So in these two verses, for example, he says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you." He's received and enjoyed, experienced his Father's love in a remarkable way, and in the same way he has loved them. Unlimited, overwhelming, unconditionally he has loved them. "Now therefore dwell in my love." So as I have received Father's love and I am loving you like my Father loved me, so you dwell or remain or abide in my love. Now to do this, they have to be obedient. This is a command, as I said, and they have to be obedient. So he says, "If you obey my commands, you will dwell or remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain or abide in his love." He's been obedient to the uttermost, every point, pray and obey to the fullest. And he expects that kind of obedience in us. Now this, I want to bring out 5 principles out of these 2 verses. So if you realize, Jesus has come to the end of his earthly life, 3 years of public ministry, and now he's standing in the very shadow of the cross. And he's talking of his Father's love. No question, no doubt. Just obedient to his Father's will to go to the cross. And he knew all the terrors that were awaiting him. But in this time, actually, what he's doing is, he's trying to encourage, comfort, strengthen his disciples. He knew they're going to feel abandoned, they're going to feel forsaken, they're going to feel sort of lost. So he's trying to encourage and strengthen them in what he is saying in these verses. So we find, I want to bring out 5 principles from these verses. Abiding in his love is not automatic. Just because we are a disciple of Jesus and sincere followers, it does not mean that automatically we will abide in his love. It needs discipline, and it needs effort, and it needs action on our part to fulfill his command to abide in his love. No, abide in his love. That means we are cocooned or just embrace in the embrace of his love, and we are safe and nestled close to him. That is the kind of love Jesus is offering to them. So we have to abide in that love so that he can protect us from our own selves and from that of the world. The second principle is that when we abide in his love, we obey his commandments. So as I mentioned, obedience is very important. And unless we obey him, He's not able to do for us and with us what he really wants to do. So obedience is very important. Third principle is that we love our brothers and sisters in Christ. John 13:34 and 35, he says, a new commandment. It's not an old commandment, but it's a new commandment I give you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. Fourth principle is that he promises great joy. Can you imagine? Hearts are heavy, minds are troubled, they are so filled with doubt and uncertainty. What is really happening? What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to Jesus? What will they do? All these questions are in the mind. And he says, joy. We have great joy. And it's just not joy, In this verse it says, fullness of joy. Complete your joy. The shadow of the cross falling on him. He can talk about my joy be with you, and your joy will be made full. It's an experience we have, a reality we can have in Christ. And the last principle is, he calls us his friends. He says, you're no longer my servants, slaves, you're my friends. Friends, the Old Testament, Abraham and Moses were called the friend of God. They were very intimate, close with God. They had a huge task, responsibility of leading his people. And they were close, obedient to him, desiring him, loving him, wanting to do his will. And he calls them his friend, a friend of God. What does it mean? When we have friends, we share with them what we normally will not share with anybody else, And the more intimate we are with them, the closer we are to them, the more deeper we can share with them. So he says, you are my friends. So, two obstacles we see to this abiding. And one is complacency. We are following a terrible pace, hectic time. And we're self-sufficient. Now it's an age of technology. And we are self-sufficient. We can do a lot of things. And we think we are self-sufficient. And we do not need to depend on Christ. Is that beyond our experience when we face a big task or responsibility in the church or your workplace or even your home, you think it's just too much. And you try to get about doing things, from management experts, effective home, family life, all these things, books we read, internet, we try to shape ourselves up. It doesn't work. We need dependency on God. He gives the power for us to rise above our limitations. He gives the wisdom for us to choose what is good and not good. We need to depend on him. The second obstacle we see is that we are in an age where we tend to achieve rather than abide. For example, we are full of activities for the church. Even our churches, when I look at the churches, I've talked to the pastors, they're full of programs for the children, for the youth, for the teens, for the women, for the men, for the elderly. Name it, they have it. Whole lot of programs. But I said, where is your ministry? Meeting the needs of people, teaching them to pray, abide in Jesus. So we tend to achieve. It satisfies our ego actually, when we put up a good program. It's all for God and it's in the name of the church. But that's not what Christ desires. He wants us. The important thing, unless we abide in him, what we achieve may be fruitless works. So help us to be careful of these trends that are coming in, to take us away from the standard that Jesus has commanded us. Abide in my love. May the Lord help each one of us to evaluate, search our own hearts. And if We are staying in one of this. We are so busy. We have no time for God. During quiet prayer, study of His Word, and just seeking His face. Let us try to abide in Him more. In Jesus' name. Amen.